Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learning from Australia. I'm delighted and honoured to be joined today by John Cunningham, who is a business owner of Cunningham Real Estate in Sydney. John has very kindly agreed to come on this whilst he's on a personal retreat. So I'm incredibly grateful for you to give your time this morning in Australia, and it will be going out later today. So thanks very much, John. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into real estate in the first place?
Yeah, 47 years I've been in the industry now, and I started out with an intention actually to become a real estate valuer. So that was my study that I undertook, but I found it to be insanely boring, and decided at the ripe old age of 21 to enter the real estate industry per se in a different role. So I started in property management. Um, did that for 2 years. I happened to work for a gentleman who taught me everything not to do. So it was seriously one of the best learnings you can ever have in the early part of your career, so long as you understand that you're learning what not to do, as opposed to learning what to do. So it was great. It enabled me to apply common sense and gut feeling to things that weren't right. And then I embarked on a sales career from there, and quite frankly, never looked back.
Fantastic. So lessons that you learned about what not to do at 21, what would they have been?
Well, it was quite interesting. My father gave me four pieces of advice before I started, and they were beautiful. First one was always tell the truth. It's one, it's the right thing to do, but secondly, you forget your lies because they're not real. It makes sense to always tell the truth. Second one was just apply common sense to everything, because he was the first person who ever said to me, it's not that common these days, but always apply common sense. Third one was, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. So, from a trades perspective, that's measure twice, cut once, that same philosophy. Just if you're going to do it well. Don't cut corners. And the fourth bit of advice was just be a nice person, be nice to people, be kind, be caring. It costs you nothing, but it pays life's greatest dividend. So it is an interesting. I told my wife that that was something that really resonated with me from a very early age, because it was something that was just part of our life as in growing up.
Okay, I love all of those. Brilliant.
So the opposite to that, Steve,
was all of those.
I was witnessing the opposite to all of that. That was pretty obvious. He was a grumpy character. He lied through his teeth. He just didn't have a common sense brain in his head, and he cut corners. So it was just like, and it hasn't worked for him for the last 15 years. And I can see it was a tin pot one man show, and the reason he took me on was because he didn't actually want to do any work. So it was quite simple. That was a good learning.
So then, getting into sales, how did you start off?
Yeah, sales was a blessing. It was this agency had two real estate salespeople go through it while I was there, and neither of them sold anything in the time they were there. So they moved on, and another person came in, and I just said to the guy, I said, look, I can do better than them. They've really got no idea what they're doing. Anyway, I did. I worked for him in sales for probably 4 months, I think. Sold about 5 or 6 properties. Got a taste for it, and then I was headhunted. I was headhunted. Then I was headhunted later. I then saw a job with another competitor locally who I respected quite well, and I went for that job and got that job. And the whole thing just made sense to me. We were working in a multi-list system at the time, which meant you had access to all the stock. And it just made sense to me that all I had to do was find out what people needed and deliver that to them. And so then I figured out later that if I got my own listings, I actually made more money, and that made sense. So I just rang up private callers, and it was just I don't know. It made sense to me. So when something makes sense to people, and I use that same philosophy with clients, if things make sense to them, they'll do business with you. So making sense of the whole thing enabled me to apply all those 4 rules, all those 4 bits of advice, and it just made it easy.
Okay, so a couple of questions piggybacking on what you said there. You said you had respect for the other agent, your competitor. So what were they doing that made you respect them, that you were happy to go and work with them?
Oh, look, that's simple, Steve. He was a decent human being. You know, he wasn't setting the world on fire in sales or in his business or anything of that nature, but he was a decent human being. And it was someone that I could communicate with, work with, and we developed a great rapport. So he was at the end of his career, or ending of his career, and two of us started there with him. He was the first sort of people he'd had for some time, and we sort of really re-established the agency, so to speak. And then I was doing a lot of still the multi-list sales with other agencies, and I was selling. There was one agent locally who was a bigger agency. I was selling more of their stock than any of their agents were. And so he said, look, can you please come and work for me, because I'm losing too much money going out the door to you. And I really respected him massively. He was like the guy that I wanted to be my mentor. So I moved over to him, and that I stayed there for 10 years. So it was good.
And what lessons did you learn while you were there over those 10 years?
I learned everything from him. I mean, he was there for the first 3, and then he went off and he was a sales manager and a minor shareholder, and he started his own business. And I was with another young guy there who we had the opportunity to buy that business down the line, and he said, and I wasn't financially in a position to do that, whereas his family was. And we just had our first baby, and it was just a bit too much pressure, and I was a bit reluctant to make that commitment. But that mentor just really cemented my thoughts on how you do business, and how you found business, how you won business, and how you service business. He understood that better than probably anyone that I had met in the industry. So my 4 pieces of advice married with that just made things even better. So it was, and plus the industry was getting more sophisticated. We were doing, we primarily became an auction orientated business as opposed in the space of 5 years, which prior to that auctions were rare. And we started to change, I started to change a lot of the things that were happening in the way that we did business. So I was breaking some fairly new ground fairly early on. And then when we decided actually what happened with that business, the guy that owned it, who was the guy that I started with, he said, oh, look, when we've established, I'll offer you shares and we can buy into it. And when that time came, he wouldn't do it. He held on to his little precious. And I said, look, I'm not going to, I want to do my own thing. And I'm the one changing everything here. I'm the one with all the ideas. Anyway, he went away for 3 months on a sabbatical, and I looked after the business for 3 months. And my wife and I said, why are we doing this for him when we should be doing this for us? And so that's what we did. We started the business in 91, and we changed a lot of the status quo when we did it. We changed things that had never been seen before, never been done before. And that we started in the middle of a recession. So in 1991, people go, no, you're mad, you're crazy, you shouldn't start a business in the middle of a recession. And we did, and we flourished.
So what did you do to flourish in a recession then? Because obviously the market at the moment is in the UK is a lot more challenging. From what I'm hearing in Australia, similar issues with high interest rates, cost of living as well. I'm understanding in the last couple of weeks, seeing a lot more price reductions than have been for a while in certain pockets of in Sydney. So, what lessons did you learn from starting in a business in a recession? It's actually a very good time to start.
Yeah, look, it was very simple lessons. The reality was that people had no our competitors had no idea about customer service. They simply didn't understand it. They treated their clients like mushrooms, to stick them in a box in a corner and let them, and forget about them. So we took the view. My wife was a school teacher. Um, I was a trained valuer. I had great technical knowledge. I had great people skills, and we both had great people skills. So we talked to people about their experiences and what they had and what was missing. And I had this very simple idea. Let's just do everything that others don't do. Let's just do the things that other people couldn't be bothered doing. Let's actually service and help people on this journey and give them the best service they've ever experienced. So we created a thing called partnership plan where we treated our clients as a joint venture. In other words, we have the same interests, and that is to get you the best possible outcome from the sale of your property, and doing it in a very transparent, open manner that has full communication. And we just went into this thing, and it was like a breath of fresh air. That the consumers just went, "Wow, haven't ever experienced this before. This level of care, this level of trust." We saw ourselves as trusted guides, trusted advisors on taking people on a journey. And it wasn't rocket science. It was just simply the fact that we understood the customer better than anyone else did. So we put strategies in place that enabled us to um, provide far greater value for the same price. And when you look at that as a concept, it costs you no more to get the best. Um, but think little simple things, Stephen, like when we took on a client, we would say to them, okay, let's sit down and have a strategy meeting before we start and understand how this is actually going to play out, because people simply don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what they need to know. So it's like our job and our value is in actually helping people understand that, making things make sense. So go back to those four pieces of advice. They were all in that mix. They were just taking it to a supercharged level where we would have clients understanding fully how this is all going to roll out. We would be communicating with them almost daily. I had a commitment where I say, I'm going to communicate with you. I'm going to give you a call before you go to sleep every night, bar Sunday and Thursday. Thursday is the day I have off. But Thursday is when I send you an actually weekly written summary, and you'll get that hand delivered. This is before emails. And when emails come along, get stick it in the inbox. But I would make sure I'd call them before they went to sleep, so they never had to wonder what happened today with the sale of their property. They were always at ease with that. So we'd come to the decision-making time, and I would meet them. I'd have the strategy meeting. I'd have a midpoint meeting, physical meeting with them in a campaign on these 4 to 5 week campaigns. And then I'll have a pre-auction strategy meeting again to do this. So it was a lot of commitment in terms of doing these things. And we had it from a family perspective, an arrangement that I'd be out 2 nights a week working. So that was how it was. But I would compensate that with other things, finishing early, picking up the kids, being there for dinner, holidays. Sundays was family day. It was just, that was non-negotiable. And I just made sure that, again, on Sundays, I would say to clients, look, Sundays is all of our day of rest. I imagine you want that day as well as I do. And actually buyers do as well. So we don't do negotiations on a Sunday. And what I did was basically take control on behalf of the client of the campaign. And when they understood why, they were happy with that. It wasn't like people had to ring me to get answers. I was proactively contacting them. I'd even ring people some days and say, hey, look, Jim, just let you know, absolutely nothing has happened today. It's just, it's been a quiet day, and I've sent out a few emails and I made a few calls, but I've got nothing to report, which is a good thing. In other words, no one's dropped out of the pitch or whatever it may be. But it just made a simple communication strategy work really well. I would do little things like changing the ad every week, changing the photographs on the internet, changing photographs on the newspaper ad. Just mix it up. Just make things. Do everything you can possibly do. No stone left unturned to get the best possible outcome.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And that kept going. We kept doing new things all the time.
Okay. Okay, great, John. So thank you. So you talk a lot about communication. You talk about supercharging customer service. And I love the fact you talked about being a trusted advisor. In Australia, you're licensed. In the UK, we're not licensed. I won't say on there what people think of estate agents in the UK. Um, how can people educate the consumer better so they actually understand what estate agents and real estate agents do? Because I've learned recently, I don't think the consumer actually understands what we do.
And it's the same here. And the reason for that is the frequency of the transaction. So if you think about the more frequent transaction, people who do transactions are tenancy based. So if you look at, and I'm not sure of the numbers in the UK, but in Australia, it's a 68% home ownership to 32% renters in the. So it's heading towards that 2/3, 1/3 ratio. So if you look at what people mostly think about real estate agents, it's mostly from a tenancy perspective because they're moving more frequently. That's an on average 18-month turnover. From a sales perspective, people are moving less frequently. And in our area in the Northern Beaches, it's between 15 and 20 years tenure. So it's a long hold that people are staying put. So their interaction with us is infrequent and is based on usually past experiences that were either good or bad. So you can't get a real good picture on it because when they ask people about real estate agents, they ask everyone, and it gets heavily weighted on the tenancy side, which in most cases, quite frankly, they say, oh, it was terrible, they did this. And as we know, it's mostly the person's complete lack of understanding of their obligations as a tenant and also a complete lack of understanding of obligations as a landlord that causes the friction. The friction doesn't need to be there. It's communication and expectation piece. Let's all understand the rules of engagement before we start anything, whether it be a sale or a tenancy. And so when you do a specific survey on property sellers in Australia, you are getting something to the tune of an 80% plus satisfaction rate, right? When you do a purchaser survey, you're getting less than 50%. And that is often just, in my view, it's mostly through lack of knowledge. They didn't know what the experience or the expectation was. And because it's an unknown expectation, it's going to lead to disappointment. So one of the things that we do is educate our buyers on what to expect. Understand this is how we're going to do the rules of negotiation because we're in a high demand, low supply marketplace. So we've always got multiple buyers, in most cases, on a property. And at auctions, when people miss out at auctions, they're disgruntled, they're not happy because they lost it. Nothing to do with us, but who are they going to blame? They're going to blame us. They just didn't have, the pockets weren't deep enough. But there's a lot of misleading, deceptive conduct in Australia around underquoting and the games that agents play around that. Now, underquoting as a concept is, property values, as you're well aware, are subjective. They're the most subjective thing you can imagine. But the government's legislation treats it in an objective manner. And therefore, you cannot get those two aligned in any shape or form. You know the value of a property. Sorry, I don't know the value of property. I've got an idea within a 10% range, but sometimes that range stretches out to 20% because we have no idea how far someone will go on the desire to secure that property. We can get a sense, we can get an idea, and as a trained valuer, I can put a number on it, but I could be 10% out either way on what someone pays for a property. So that whole concept of an agent and their role is so mixed up and messy. How do we change that? All we can do is change it by providing better and better and better and better experiences, by more and more education of people to understand our role and what we do, because society actually needs us. Society cannot function without us. And it's a weird thing that you're not licensed in the UK because, in our world, we're running trust accounts of millions and millions and millions and millions, multi-millions of dollars. To have that not licensed and regulated would be an insanity to me. And also the fact that you are being given the keys to someone's greatest asset, and you have no ramifications around that also sounds crazy.
Yeah, you can be a butcher one day, a dentist one day, and an estate agent the next day.
Yeah.
And you don't need any training. It is scary. So, we've got the ongoing government are talking about it. They've been talking about it for a long time. I'm sure it will happen. I'm not convinced it'll be in my lifetime, but we'll wait and see.
It's just,
So,
I think you've probably got a few places in the world like that.
Yeah.
If you're a real estate person in Indonesia, you're heavily trained. If you're a real estate person in Germany, you have to have a degree. It's and it's because of the complexity. The complexity of what we do is massive, right? And the consumer just sees the simple, like, oh, you just take keys and drive fancy cars and open doors and get paid a lot of money. We say, and now they say, and you don't wear socks. We have a lot of agents don't wear socks. They have silk lined shoes.
It's too cold in the UK not to wear socks. Otherwise, I'm sure that fashion would happen.
Massive misconception of what we do until people experience it and they go, oh my God. I sold a property for one of the CEOs of the top 4 banks in Australia. And when it was concluded, he said, my God, John, I remember that conversation when we started. We talked about what your value was. And we talked about, the fact that I couldn't do what he does and he can't do what I do. And he agreed. It was the fact that he said, but you've just blown me away with the whole way that you've gone about this, the way that you got the result. I actually conducted the auction and he was on a phone in Melbourne listening to it. And he said, it's just extraordinary, the value that you provided. And he gave me a huge bonus as a result of it. I had a variable fee with him that enabled him to determine the fee. And he increased that by 20%. And then gave myself and the other agent I was working with as a bonus, because he loved the concept of getting rewarded for delivery. And I think that is a little bit of a missed opportunity in our industry, is that the delivery is often based on promises that aren't necessarily going to happen. They're not actually based on fact, because people are what we call buying business. They're overpricing things and then under delivering. And I love the concept. I did this for years, where I just enabled the client to determine my value based on what I delivered. And they, and in our case, it was a fee between 2 and 3%. They chose it. That was the thing. The bottom was 2, high was 3. This guy, this banker, he paid me 3.5 on a property that would be worth today probably $6 million. So, that was because he saw the value. And I think this is the single biggest issue that we have, is that consumers do not see the value sufficiently. They see the bling, the smoke and mirrors, the promises. But when you look at true value is something that resonates with you and has meaning to you. But most agents don't discover what people need to then enable to deliver the solution.
Okay.
They're on guesswork.
So I've got 2 questions for you. One, how can you demonstrate to the consumer what we do? So what are you doing to educate that consumer? And secondly, you've talked a lot about value. How can you demonstrate value as an agent?
Very easy. It starts with the discovery, right? So let's say we're doing an appraisal on your property, Stephen, and we're having a phone call. And in that conversation, you might be referred to me, or I might have found you through some prospecting source. And we're setting up a time for me to come and look at your property. And what I'm going to ask you in that interview is, what are the 3 most important things you would like to either learn or achieve from the meeting we're having on Tuesday? Right now, that question will stimulate thought by you. So you go, oh, okay, yeah. Well, actually, I want to. And you tell me 3 things that you'd like to get out of that, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so for me, what's important is how am I going to get a premium price? How are you going to do it in a time scale that suits me? And I want an agent that's going to take the stress out of it, because I've bought and sold before and it's been really stressful.
Great. That is fantastic that you've highlighted those 2 things. And quite frankly, sometimes people don't go that deep, but I'm really glad that you have, because it enables me to explain the strategic approach we take to selling property. Those three things that you've mentioned fit into what we call our 7 key selling strategies. And those 7 key selling strategies are designed to ensure you get the absolute premium result. And quite frankly, without putting all those 7 strategies into place, I can't see how you could achieve it. So that's what we're going to really look at so closely when I meet you on Tuesday, because when you talk about the premium price, that's the final outcome. What goes right into that to make sure that it's in a timely manner, because that's, again, another objective, is that premium results occur in a shorter period of time. They don't occur over a longer period of time, because we have what we call a buyer wave, where it peaks at a certain time frame, which is about 3 weeks. And we want to make sure that we maximize that outcome within the 6-week period. Our average days on market, just so that you're aware, is 23 days. So we are actually absolutely targeting that premium result. Then when you look at all those things, and you want to make sure that you've got someone that's actually looking after you, someone that you can trust, someone that you know is going to hold your hand on this journey and make sure that you come out the other end better off than when you began. And that's by engaging those 7 strategies. The first strategy, for example, Stephen, is presentation. For us, it all starts with presentation. Presentation leads to great marketing, because if you don't get the presentation right, you don't get the marketing right. The marketing then leads us to actually understanding the pricing dynamics of the property. And we can understand that pricing dynamics more when we understand the product we're actually really looking after. We then go into the communication strategy for both yourself and the buyer, because this is very much an open, transparent thing. Because you think about it as a consumer, as a buyer, you've gone through both sides of the equation, what you're saying to me. So when you think about being a buyer, and I'm going to be talking to you a lot about this. I'm going to tell you, Stephen, I want you to put your buyer's hat on now and take your seller's hat off, because we're going to look at it from that perspective. When you do that, it enables you to understand buyer behaviors. And buyer behaviors are the critical component to everything that we do. Understanding that perspective will enable you to maximize your price. Then we look at the whole negotiation strategy, how that's going to play out. And then we've got the closure. So those 7 strategies put together, and I imagine what's going through your head now is you're understanding, okay, I see how they all fit. They all fit together. So that type of conversation, then we'll just go out of role play mode, then leads to me saying, what I'm going to send you before I see you is a document. It's called our strategic planning document. It will outline those 7 key strategies. And I implore you, Stephen, please invest the 10 minutes that all it take to read through that, so that when I come and see you on Tuesday, we can sit down and have a really good talk about the implications of those 7 strategies and how that fits in with your 3 key elements. And then I'd love you to take me on a tour of the home, so I get a really good understanding of your property. Now, what I've demonstrated there is the first part of a multi-layered value proposition. What I've done in that 3 minutes, whatever it was, is do something that probably nobody else has done, right? So value is me understanding your needs. You've given me 3 beautiful things that will stay with me all the way through. There's another question I'll be asking you in this conversation as well, which is, before I see you, I'd love to just get a sense of, what's the really big thing, or what's the thing you love about your home more than anything, or what's a feature that's just so outstanding? And you're going to tell me because you're proud of it, or whatever it may be. I'm going to leverage that bit of information in everything I do. It's even going to be written in a thank you note that I give you. It's going to be referenced when we meet. It's going to be referenced in the material I send you in within 30 minutes, because I've listened to you. Now, when you start to think about these little bits in isolation, and I actually did, it's quite ironic, I did a training session with my team on this yesterday. We call it points of value in the proposition. We came up with 19 elements that we can touch either in this conversation or between now and when I see you on Tuesday, because we're going to be communicating with bits of information of value. And when it comes to meeting you, we should have already won the business, quite frankly. Because you've just had something that no one else has even bothered to do. You went, he's interested in what's important to me. And he's got a strategy to deliver that outcome. And I've got to tell you, it's insanely simple, but it's not done.
What you've just shared is absolute gold. Thank you. And I wasn't expecting all of that. So my lessons there are your listening skills. Repeated everything I had said exceptionally well. There was signposting as well as to what was going to happen. So it wasn't like, loads of questions. I love the strategic planning. So you're talking about the process. 100%. Hello.
That's a puppy dog. Yeah.
All right. No, 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 normally it's my dogs and my birds, so we're okay. But I'm in Australia, so I've got no dogs and I've got no pets. I got no pets today. So you're welcome. And again, I love the word simple. And I think agency is very simple. And it's mastering 4 disciplines. But thank you, it's been great. I enjoyed role playing. I could carry on all day, and I'm very conscious that you're on the retreat. So you tell me how much. You tell me how much longer I've got, because otherwise, otherwise,
you keep going.
I want to share more of your knowledge. So that 19 points of value, which is fantastic. I'd love to get a copy, being cheeky.
Yep.
Fantastic.
We just made it yesterday. So
okay, fantastic. The other thing I'm going to send to you, and this is the same for anybody, if we do get anybody listening or watching this, so I had a discussion. I was in the gym, and there were 2 agents talking in the gym, and they left, and there was a customer there, and he said, estate agents are a joke. All they do is put a property on a portal, and that's it. And they don't do anything. And I said to the gentleman, I said, do you honestly believe that? And sadly, and he said yes. And I said, well, can I give you 2 minutes of my time and explain what they do? And sadly for him, he said yes. And I said, here are 54 things an estate agent does from the time they're instructed to when they complete. And I share that with you and anybody in Australia who wants it as well. And it may be slightly different as well. And he went, oh, do you know what? I really did not know that's what they did. I thought all they did was put a property on the portal. And I think it's so important to understand and educate the consumer what we do. I recently,
because we created a flow chart of what we call touch points of value for a client, and in a sale it was 354 touch points of value.
Well, okay, you beat mine.
Well, it was getting down to the micro level,
Yeah.
The reality is your 54 is probably spot on. That it's there are 54 things that we do that have significance to you in this transaction, and you're right. They simply don't know what they don't know. They're completely unaware. And so when you educate people to understand it, they see your value. And if you don't, where's the value? In the absence of actually a compelling reason, price is an issue because there's no differential in value. So give me something that, and again, because all these things that we're doing are not being done by other agents or not being done by the majority of agents, some are, but it's the granular elements of just that process of discovery, which sets up our relationship. And if you don't do that, you're constantly sort of on the back foot, if you know what I mean, in the relationship.
So again, what I love there is your language. Okay, so people talk, right? So how do we book in a market appraisal? So you're not talking about booking it in, you're talking about discovering it. So the process of discovery. And again, understanding that and getting it in the mindset of people that what you're doing is you're going to help people. You're going to understand better what their needs are. You're going to add the value. So for me, you're demonstrating why you're worth your 3.3% or your 2% to 3.3%, which is incredible. So at the moment in the UK, there's a race to the bottom on fees.
Oh, it's averaging 1% to 2% now, and in those days when we were on those 2s and 3s, our average fee in our business is 185, I think, with an average sale price of 2.3 million. But that's the race, and the race is caused by us, by agents not having enough of a value proposition, so price becomes an issue. So if you're competing with that, you've got to be super skilled in this stuff to actually understand. And 20% of the people are just going to take the lowest fee. Let's remember there's that 80-20 rule. That's just what it's going to be. They're not They don't care about value. They just care about price. 80% of people, in my view, understand value, but they just have to be given the proposition to understand the concept of value, but they have to understand your value.
Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about, and you shared so much gold, honestly, and I'm really, really grateful. So thank you. And again, your question about, what's one bit of the house that you actually love that, maybe only you know about, I think it's a quality question as well. And actually, another question is, what's your favorite part of the house? And that's where you sit down. But I love the little things that you're saying, if they say, I love the views of the garden, and you're going to put, when you see them, one of the touch points, I look forward to seeing your beautiful garden and whatever it is, so they know that you've listened. I love all of that. And again, as you said, it's simple. It's not rocket science, and it's just these little things that make it is.
Yeah.
And makes a massive difference. Okay, so another thing that we see here is maybe I'm being a little bit cruel to some agents, but as a seller, I want a skilled negotiator. I want an agent who's going to get me every last single penny for my biggest tax-free asset. Some agents get, very excited. They get an offer. The seller said to them, right, you get me that price, fine, we do the deal. The best agents will, go way above that. So what's the best negotiating skills that you use, you've seen your agents use, that can demonstrate that you are going to get every last single penny for the seller?
Absolutely. How I sort of frame that, and I'm a big framer of things. So like, you're talking about pre-frames and frames, is to say, okay, Stephen, just think about a race, right? You got a 100-meter sprint, and there's the finishing line. Now, you've told me that you really would love to get $1.35 million for your property. That's sort of a wish number. And look at that as a finishing line, right? So you've got 6 people in the race. They're all running. And there's some people who burst through that tape and they just stop, right? And there's others who don't even get to the tape. And there's people who the champions who hit that tape and they keep running, right? They've even taken the tape with them and they keep running because they know that the race isn't over. They are still in race mode, right? So we believe that's the way that we have to approach the sale of your property. But that's the outcome. Let's now go back a little bit to understand how we get there, because how we get there is more important than the end of it, because it will enable us to make sure that when we do hit that tape, we've got all 6 buyers there, ready to roll. They're all prepared. They all understand the rules of engagement. They understand what we're doing. So as an agent, I understand that I've got my ducks lined up. What we have to do is find out how far those people are prepared to run, how far they're prepared to go. To do that, we have to know them. We have to understand their needs and understand their behaviors. So the whole concept of buyer behaviors is something that, in reality, the number one thing that you're taking me on to do is to find buyers. Would that be fair to say? And find the best buyers, and to find multiple buyers, to put them into a competitive environment to actually achieve the best price. If it's just one buyer, well, that's when you really are going to make sure that you've got the best agent working for you to ensure that you actually achieve your result. But how do we do that? It comes down to trust. It comes down to a trust between you and me. It comes down to a trust between me and the buyers. I call it creating the environment. I create an environment where we can achieve the best possible price. It's not just hope is a strategy, or hope we can do this, or I'm going to be a hard-ass negotiator. Hard-ass negotiation does not work anymore. And do you know why? Because 80% of buying decisions have been made by women. And so hard-ass blokes trying to negotiate that way simply fail these days. And it's why the emergence of women in real estate, when you get a male and female combination together, is so powerful. So what happens is that we create buyers, and we call the process we're going to take them through is we activate them. In other words, we know these buyers, whether it comes from marketing or it comes from our database or it comes from our hot buyer list, whatever, then we activate them into action. Once we activate into action, we get them engaged on the property. We nurture them along that journey. We provide them with the best possible information for them to make the best possible decisions. The interesting thing about buyers and decisions, the best decision for a buyer isn't how much I'm going to buy it cheaply. It's I want to secure this property, and how much am I going to have to pay? So when we create that sort of environment, we have the opportunity to ensure that not only have we found the buyers, we've actually got them activated and engaged and nurtured into making a decision. And we've got multiple buyers because we haven't alienated buyers. They're fickle creatures. They can fall off the perch just as easy as go on it. So we want to keep them all on that perch and ready to pounce on that property. So when we do that, we're actually in a place where we can negotiate, whether it be in an auction situation or whether it be in a private treaty situation, with committed buyers. And that is the most powerful negotiation strategy you can put into place. Does that make sense to you?
That makes great sense. Thank you.
And that's how I finish it. Every time. Does that make sense? Does that sound right? How do you feel about that? So that checking in, again, you're getting back to questions to find out where it sits. But that's just a very quick sort of summary, I suppose, of understanding buyer dynamics, understanding buyer behaviours, understanding how they work. Because if you don't, and again, why I would be saying to you, Stephen, stick your buyer hat on now. I want you to think like this. You're looking to buy a property. What's going to get you to pay premium price? Let's think about what will lead you there. To understand why you're going into this, you have to understand what's going on, how you're going to execute it, and when it's all going to happen. So all those things, you do not want to leave any unknowns, right? You don't want to have any ambiguity. You want to make sure that there's clarity, there's direction, all those things, and it's straightforward and it's simple, because you've taken all the unknowns and ambiguity out and that's all disappeared. Now it's simple, straightforward, and it's a transparent. We actually provide consumers with an understanding of how we're going to work. There's no hidden agendas. There's nothing. It's all auditable, and everything we do is in writing. So those sort of things give people confidence. So at the end of the day, providing buyers with the confidence, providing the seller with the confidence, is what I call the confidence loop. It's between the three of us. There's a confidence in all of us to actually achieve this outcome. And I've got this big whole training session on confidence. To me, confidence is the key to real estate success. But there's the preceding confidence and there's post-confidence. Happy to share all this stuff with you, by the way, because it's really interesting when you get down to what agents don't know. They need to understand about confidence. It starts with knowledge. Confidence then leads to the ultimate outcome of the client, is connection. So there's these things that psychologically most agents just don't understand. They haven't allowed themselves to be exposed to it, or they haven't been exposed to it.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. God, you're sharing so much gold. So yes, I would love a confidence loop as well as the 19 points. As the 19 points of value. I feel that not only am I taking time in your retreat, you're incredibly generous. So thank you. I'm not going to keep you from that.
Educate the real estate world to be better. Hallelujah. Because quite frankly, it's I call it 50% crappy out there.
Well, I think 95% of estate agents in the UK aren't great. I think they're 5% that are exceptional, and they're the ones that are always willing to invest and improve and keep on learning. So opportunity for the 95% to improve and get better. Listen to John, Listen to this, absolutely gold. So, if you are listening to it, please share it. Please tag your colleagues in as well, because there is loads out there that's going to make a massive difference and help. So talk to me about Rise. What's Rise?
Yeah, so Rise is an initiative that we created 5 years ago, and it's an initiative for the betterment of the people within the industry. So it's identifying that there's a problem, and the problem is multiple. We did a survey which identified the health risks for mental health risks, particularly for the industry. We have incredibly high divorce rates. We have incredibly high alcoholic and drug dependency issues. We have addiction issues. We have financial strains. We have unrealistic expectation put on people. And all that has a negative impact on people's mental health and their families. So we wanted to try and say, okay, let's address this. Let's look at how we can do something about this. And the number one thing we discovered was that we can help businesses create better workplace environments. We can create better places for people to come to work to, who are not led by autocratic leaders and who are cracking the whip and having unrealistic expectations on people, but also helping people develop to enable them to be the best people they can be, the best versions of themselves, and not have this this sort of unrealized expectations from others affecting their life and their family. And this is the thing that we've found is endemic through the industry. It's just so poorly handled by a lot of business owners. It's changing, and I think Rise has had a lot to do with that, where we're putting mental health programs in place. We've created a mental health app for the industry, which has had about 15% uptake so far, and it's still got a long way to go. But from 100,000 people, we've got 15,000 people using the app. The education programs we're running, the conferences we're running, particularly with leadership, are groundbreaking. These things just haven't existed before. And they're powerful messages to the leaders of the industry that it's our responsibility. Not only do we have a legal responsibility now in our workplaces, we have a moral, we have an ethical responsibility. And the greatest component of it is that you put all those things in place, and the outcome is a better business, a more productive business, and a high performance business. It's a no-brainer to understand. There's studies across the world that prove this. And so we really are focusing our energy on getting people said, hey, if you want a high performing business, this is how you do it. Anthropological studies have also proven that if you put great leadership in place, you'll have better people, you'll have a stronger culture, and a stronger culture will create a better performance culture. You'll get better performance as a result out of that. So it's like, science is telling us this, we're just not listening.
So I'm a founder member of Agents Together in the UK, which was set up to help agents. We've got about 500 mentors that give up their time for free. We've got over 1,000 people that have taken us up on the offer. We provide wellbeing webinars and stuff like that. There was a recent report by Simon Ledbetter that talks all about wellbeing and mental health in the industry, which I will send over to you, so you can see you can see what's going on in the UK as well.
Right.
And give you an understanding, and maybe we can share stuff there that will help each other as well. I could carry on.
Initiative.org, so you can look us up.
Okay, we'll do.
I'll send you links to the other stuff anyway.
Amazing. So one final question. So I've been reading a book by Richard Reed. He was a founder of Smoothies in the UK, Innocent Smoothies. And he asked one question to everybody, and that is, what is one bit of advice, and I think you shared 4 with your father, that you would tell people? So if you were talking to people today, what is the one thing that you would offer out as your advice?
That would be find yourself. I've found a lot of people really don't know who they are. And therefore can't believe in themselves as a result. Therefore, because they can't believe in themselves, they don't have a conviction. They don't have a conviction, they don't have an energy, and they have an energy, they don't have confidence. So if you want to end up in a world of live in a world of optimism rather than pessimism, find yourself, understand yourself. Who you really are, not who you think you should be, or not who you think others should think you should be, but who you really are. And once you do that, the doors open. And it's then a matter of going, okay, I know who I am. I understand who I am. I have self-belief, and to me, self-belief is the real component. That's where the next bit starts from, because not necessarily, the self-belief, self-confidence, all that stuff, but a substance, something of substance. But you can't do it unless you know who you are and what you stand for. So it's that would be what I would say, because that opens the door.
Okay, and how can you find yourself if you're struggling or you don't know where to start? Where would you start?
Seek help. Ask someone. You need someone, or you have to find someone that you can talk to about it. Because if you're struggling in that environment, the number one thing you need is a mentor, or we call it. We just had our Rise conference, and a well-known tennis player from Australia called Yelena Dokic went through horrific life, um, and of physical and mental abuse from her father, and she left that toxic environment and found herself. But it took a friend, Todd Woodbridge, another famous tennis player from Australia, was there
Yeah,
to
great doubles player.
Yep, exactly. Yep, the two told you. And that was a great example of that. It's like she just didn't know where to start until she talked to Todd. It's just having a person or finding a person. Now, the services that we have in the UK and in Australia are phenomenal. Use them, talk to someone, and get to know who you really are, and be the person you want to be. Be the classic best version of yourself. But it's taking that first step is the hardest thing. And to do that, you've and unfortunately in this world of social media and all the rest of it, the expectations and unrealistic things that are going on, young people particularly are just lost as to who they are. It's all about who they think they should be based on what they see. Um, if they come from a great family and they get great family backing, actually having a conversation with parents about these things can change that dynamic massively. But that age between 14, 16, wow, it's such a susceptible age to be just led down the garden path by the wrong people. And then you can go through that, come out the other side, but still not really know who you are until you actually take the time to think about it.
Thank you. You've been incredible. I'm very grateful for your time. If people want to get hold of you, John, how do they do that, please?
Yeah, just email's best, john@cunninghamsre.com.au.
Amazing. Thank you.
re.com.au. Yep.
Okay, so thank you everybody for watching. I'm really grateful. Please like it, share it, tag people in that you think will benefit from it as well. And I look forward to catching up with you on the next one. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye.